Ladies and gentlemen, it is quite possible that Alvin Bragg, the Manhattan District Attorney, could possibly be indicted in the future after congressional testimony. I'm going to read you from the Department of Justice, justice.gov. Former Democratic Party chair sentenced on charges relating to campaign donations. Okay, they announced today G. Stephen Pigeon, 61, of Buffalo, New York, was convicted of to cause a foreign donation in the state in violation of federal law, was sentenced to serve 4 months in prison and 1 year supervised release. So that's just one. I mean, you can look that up. That's just one example in New York. There are a great many examples. Okay. There's another example in Philadelphia. Former congressman sent back to prison in a stuffing case. if I'm not reading the exact words, it's, I have to deal with the algorithm. But former Democratic Representative Michael J. Ozzie Myers of Philadelphia was sentenced to 2.5 years after he admitted he worked with officials to pad, of his political consultant clients. So that's in Philadelphia. Another indictment and charge on federal crimes in New York. So I read from the Department of Justice and I read from, NBC News, but there's a lot more. Department of Justice here. Former U.S. Congressman and Philadelphia political operative pleads guilty to charges. So this is just two of about 20 of these cases. Alvin Bragg, the Manhattan DA, could very well have been influenced by the Democratic Party or operatives, just like the former congressman in Philadelphia, the Democrat who was charged with federal crimes, just like the Democratic Party chair indicted for bribery scheme. This is an article from October 20th, 2017, on federal charges. So if he testifies before Congress, because there is no actual indictment of Trump. There's an indictment, but there's no federal crime there. He only has a misdemeanor. Okay, he only has a misdemeanor. Or 34 misdemeanors that are elevated to felonies. Why? We don't know why. The FEC didn't charge Trump with the crime. It's very likely that he was influenced by politics, just like, and this is for the wonderful, morally superior, wonderful liberal Democrats who don't actually read the news and the corruption on there. That was a quick search here. 2 examples of corruption where you're dealing with bribery, you're dealing with the Democratic Party machine turning on itself or, losing control. Okay, one in New York and one in Philadelphia. But there are a great many examples. There was also a judge in Philadelphia. So former judge, South Philly judge, admits he took bribes. So Dominic DeMuro. So there you go. So that's the third example. 2 in Philadelphia, 1 in New York. You can look at the Department of Justice. I'll leave the Department of Justice press releases below. Okay, so, and it's really hilarious too because the Department of Justice never actually state, oh yeah, it's a Democrat. Okay, but here you have Democrats. So Dominic DeMuro, judge. Here you have Democrats. Here, Dominic DeMuro, Democratic ward leader, pleaded guilty to, state and federal crimes, or federal crimes, I believe. So this is a judge. Okay, in addition to a former congressman, in addition to a Democratic Party chair in New York. Hit subscribe to this channel right now. I will list the links below. One rebuttal, which would be like a rebuttal from an imbecile who thinks that this is outlandish, that Alvin Bragg could possibly be indicted. The Democratic Party is a political machine that engulfs people like the former judge in Philadelphia, the former Democratic Party chair in upstate New York, the former congressman in Philadelphia. Okay, these are 3 examples right now. It took me a second to search for these examples. I had done videos on these throughout the past year, by the way, when they first, or 2 years when they came out. So I just remembered them. Hit subscribe to this channel right now. Go to hagoodman.com to read my writing in The Hill, The Huffington Post, Salon, The Jerusalem Post, The Federalist, and other publications. Go to contactgoodman88@gmail.com if you want to be part of a newsletter. And this is an important segment because there's a precedent here pertaining to corruption within the Democratic Party, government officials being corrupt. There's this belief, and by the way, the Patreon is below if you want to support my work long term. My super thanks is below next to the like and the share buttons as well. There's a belief, ladies and gentlemen, among media Democrats, highly educated, morally superior, almost always apoplectic, but really wonderful liberal Democrats that, well, if the government says something or is involved, then there can't be any bias against Trump. Okay? So he was indicted in New York because nobody is above the rule of law. The reality is that they're utilizing they're utilizing state government and federal government. So state prosecutors, the Manhattan DA, is using the federal government to go after Trump when the federal government didn't even want to indict Trump on anything. The FEC didn't view Trump to have committed a crime or even a fine, even a low level like breaking any law. He wasn't even fined. On the other hand, Hillary Clinton's campaign, and I think Hillary will be the 24 nominee. I think it'll be Trump, Hillary Clinton 2024, the return of 2016. I think that if you look, there was no federal crime, but they fabricated a federal crime that they didn't list in the indictment to go after Trump. So that's why you watch this channel, ladies and gentlemen, for these little pearls of wisdom or, kind of try to see things from an aggregate viewpoint, a bird's eye viewpoint, okay? There are already examples of bribery and corruption within that have affected government officials within the Democratic Party or who are Democrats within these political machines, cities where Democratic political machines run. It's not outlandish to think that Alvin Bragg committed a crime. If, and this is the operative word, if he was influenced in some way by the Democratic Party in New York or political operatives. That could be even media. That could be anyone from lawyers, activists, journalists. Anybody could have influenced a public official or donors. You can't utilize government to crush your political rivals, which is what Democrats do. They say that Trump is the authoritarian, he's a totalitarian, he's a despot. He's the only authoritarian in history that doesn't utilize government against his political rivals. And then when he tries to investigate why they went after him utilizing government, then he's a big bad person. But what Democrats have done against Trump is they despise him. We had record low poverty under Trump, record low poverty in 2019. Fact. We did not have an invasion in Europe. Fact. We have objectively a worse foreign policy and economic policy. The economy and foreign policy are a catastrophe under Biden. Okay? They're going after Trump because they know that around half the country will always side with Trump, and around half the country sees the reality of the Democratic Party. Without Jimmy Kimmel, without the Washington Post, New York Times, MSNBC, CNN, an entire public relations monstrosity, you can't even enjoy yourself watching late night. They don't even, if it's like an apolitical media, like a pretty, objective or apolitical, unbiased media, like we used to have that generally. They didn't really care who won. Trump runs away with it. They need an entire public relations apparatus, which they have, and Trump still gets almost half the electorate. So imagine, they have to go after him utilizing state and federal government. Give me your thoughts below. Hit subscribe right now. The DOJ links will be below. Hit subscribe. I'll be back in 1 hour.